I thought I knew my husband, but then I discovered he had another life. We met in college, and for years, everything seemed perfect. We shared the same humor, enjoyed the same music, and were best friends. However, as marriage settled in, I noticed subtle changes in him. It started with small things. He was working longer hours, claiming new responsibilities. I dismissed it as stress or career pressure. Then there were the oddities. He began wearing a different cologne, one I didn't recognize. It lingered faintly when he came home late. I rationalized it as a gift from a coworker. I also caught him staring at his phone too long, swiping away just as I entered the room. During dinner, he sometimes zoned out while I shared stories about my day. When I asked, he smiled and assured me he was just tired. The real turning point came during a weekend barbecue with friends. I overheard his best friend, Jake, joking about how some people just can't handle having two lives. The comment unsettled me. Days passed and I noticed more peculiarities. He became protective of his phone, tucking it away whenever I glanced at it. I found it odd, but still chose to trust him. Then, I discovered a charge on our credit card for a hotel I had never heard of. When I confronted him, he claimed it was for a work conference, despite saying he was working from home that week. My unease deepened. I called the hotel, pretending to look for a lost item, and the receptionist mentioned a couples special that weekend, coinciding with the charge. I tried to stay composed as I pieced everything together, feeling like I was chasing shadows. One evening, I decided to drop by his office unannounced. I overheard his colleague say, "I can't believe you pulled that off. When are you going to tell her?" I froze, heart racing, desperate to scream, but paralyzed by the truth. I left without him seeing me, realizing I was holding on to a lie. When he came home that night, I felt like a freight train was approaching. I confronted him, shaking with anger. I started with the small things, the cologne, the hotel charge, the strange conversations I had overheard. He looked caught off guard, then defensive, accusing me of paranoia. "You've always overthought things," he said, trying to shift the blame. When I mentioned Jake's comment, his demeanor changed. He grew quiet, and I could see the gears turning in his mind. "What are you saying?" he asked, his voice calm but tense. I pressed for the truth, and he eventually cracked. He admitted to being distant, but insisted there was nothing going on. I could see the lie in his eyes, and that moment felt like my world was collapsing. "How long?" I asked, tears streaming down my face. "Just a few months," he sighed, almost resigned. My heart shattered. The man I thought I knew was gone. He was a stranger before me. We stumbled through that night, filled with accusations and pain. I felt utterly broken, questioning my naivete. The next few days blurred with shock and anger. I contemplated leaving, but felt a part of me wanted to salvage something. I reached out to a therapist who helped me process my emotions. After countless sleepless nights and deep conversations, I realized staying would only continue to hurt me. I packed my things, feeling both relief and torment. The day I left, I felt lighter, yet mournful for the dreams we had shared. Reflecting now, I see the importance of trusting your instincts. Sometimes the signs are there, but we ignore them, wanting to believe the best in someone we love. If you find yourself in a similar situation, don't hesitate to ask questions or dig deeper. It's better to confront the ugly truth than remain trapped in a pretty lie. Healing takes time, but I'm finally learning to love myself again.
I discovered my husband was cheating on me because of a smell. My husband, Jake, and I had been married for 6 years. We were more than partners, we were a team, dreaming of starting a family and building our lives together. Yet, looking back, I see the early red flags. His late nights at work became more frequent. He suddenly showed interest in self-improvement with evening jogs. And there was that new cologne he'd never worn before. I initially dismissed it as him trying to be healthier and more successful, wanting to support him. Things unraveled slowly. One evening, I came home early and noticed the front door was ajar. I thought I might have forgotten to close it, but when I walked in, the atmosphere felt strange. The air was thick with a lingering scent of vanilla, mixed with something floral, almost like perfume. I tried to brush it off. Maybe I was just being paranoid. However, my unease grew. Jake came home later than usual, and when I asked about his day, he offered vague responses. "Just busy," he'd say, brushing off my concerns. Odd credit card charges began to appear. Expensive dinners at unfamiliar places and purchases from a boutique I didn't recognize. When I confronted him, he claimed it was just work-related dinners. I wanted to believe him, but a gnawing feeling persisted. Things escalated when I overheard a conversation at a friend's party. While chatting with Sarah, I caught snippets of Jake's name. I turned to hear a man say how really lucky he was to have someone like her. My heart raced. Who were they talking about? I tried to enjoy the party, but the feeling lingered. A week later, I decided to investigate. I didn't want to invade his privacy, but the inconsistencies couldn't be ignored. I began tracking his schedule and found he had more work events in the evenings than I thought. One night, I decided to surprise him at one of these events. I drove to a trendy bar downtown, only to realize I was at the wrong one. I noticed familiar faces leaving another bar up the street, laughing and relaxed. My stomach dropped when I recognized Jake's car parked nearby. In a whirlwind of emotions, I stepped inside. The atmosphere buzzed, and I scanned the room until I spotted him leaning against the bar, his arm around a woman I didn't know. They were laughing, sharing drinks, and he looked completely at ease. I felt like the ground had been pulled from under me. Backing away slowly, my heart pounded, disbelief racing through my mind. How could he do this? I confronted him that night when he came home. He walked in, reeking of that same floral scent. Before he could speak, I blurted out, "Who is she?" His face paled, and for a moment I saw a flicker of guilt. Instead of owning up, he deflected. "What are you talking about?" I could see him scrambling to find the right lie. I laid everything out, the late nights, credit card charges, and what I'd seen. He floundered, claiming it was just misunderstandings, that I was imagining things. But I wasn't imagining anything. The look in his eyes was a mix of disbelief and something darker, arrogance, as if he thought he could manipulate me. I felt the weight of heartbreak crashing down. I had trusted him completely, and there he was, desperately twisting the narrative. After that confrontation, I was a whirlwind of emotions. Shock, anger, heartbreak. I questioned every moment of our marriage, wondering if I had missed signs or if I was to blame for his betrayal. It felt like I was trapped in a fog, drowning in pain and self-doubt. A few sleepless nights later, I gathered the strength to confront him again. I told him I wanted a separation. His face reflected anger and disbelief. He tried to guilt-trip me, claiming I hadn't been supportive enough, as if his infidelity was my fault. In the end, I filed for divorce. It was the hardest decision I ever made, yet also the most liberating. Walking away from a life I thought was built on love was devastating, but I realized I deserved more than half-hearted apologies and manipulated truths. Reflecting on this painful chapter, I've learned that trust is not to be taken for granted. Pay attention to your instincts. If something feels off, don't brush it aside. Surround yourself with supportive friends and seek help from a therapist if you find yourself lost in confusion and heartbreak. Healing takes time, but I promise you, you will emerge stronger on the other side. If you find yourself in a similar situation, remember you're worth more than the lies others weave. Trust yourself and choose your happiness.
I never thought I'd find my heart shattered in the most mundane of places, a parking lot behind the grocery store. My husband, Jake, and I had been together for nearly a decade, building a life rooted in trust and love.
We shared similar values and little routines. Saturday morning coffee at our favorite cafe, everything felt solid. But recently, I noticed subtle changes. He started coming home later. His stories about coworkers became vague, and there were strange nights when he had to work late, but left his phone behind, buzzing with unknown notifications. I brushed them off, thinking he was just stressed. The turning point came at a charity event we attended. I overheard two women chatting in the restroom. One mentioned how Jake had been so sweet to her friend at the office, how he helped her so much with the project, and even brought cookies for everyone, something I knew he never did. My stomach turned. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to their exchange, but pushed it aside. Just a coincidence, right? Then, I went through our joint account statements. While reconciling our finances, I noticed an unfamiliar name linked to several transactions, one for a fancy restaurant, another for a posh boutique downtown. My heart raced as I noted the dates. They didn't match any of his work events. A cold sweat broke out as the pieces started to fall into place. The breaking point was finding a half-empty bottle of perfume I had never seen before tucked away in the bathroom cabinet. It was floral and sweet, nothing like my scent. Dread welled up inside me, a dark shadow creeping in. When I confronted him, it felt like stepping into a surreal nightmare. I had my evidence, but was filled with dread as I brought it up. "Jake, can we talk?" I began, my voice trembling. I laid everything out, the late nights, the bank statements, the perfume. His reaction shocked me. He became defensive, mixing anger with denial. "You're being ridiculous, Emma. I can't believe you'd think this of me." His eyes flared with panic and rage, and I felt manipulation seeping from his words. He tried to paint me as irrational, saying I was paranoid. I felt like I was losing my grip on reality. But the more he spoke, the more my anger morphed into heartbreak. I could see the cracks in his facade, the way he hesitated under pressure. My heart ached as I realized he was lying, and I couldn't stop the tears from falling as I faced the truth I didn't want to accept. In the end, I made the painful decision to separate. I didn't want to spend years in a relationship filled with doubt. The divorce process was grueling, filled with discussions about assets and who gets what, but dismantling our life together was hardest. There were days I thought I'd never get through it, feeling suffocated under the weight of betrayal. Now, a year later, I've learned so much about trust, intuition, and self-worth. If something feels off, don't ignore it. Listen to your gut. Surround yourself with uplifting people and don't be afraid to ask uncomfortable questions. Life takes unexpected turns, but every painful step has led me to a stronger version of myself. It's a long journey, but I'm finally starting to find peace.